Hello and welcome to PubShorts episode 56, A Kind of Magic. My name is Dr. KK. I'm the Innovation Officer at Trinka and Inago, and I have with me Tony. Hi, Tony.
Hi, KK. How are you doing today?
Oh, well, by the looks of it, I'm going out tonight for dinner.
Yeah, well, I'll be eating tonight as well, but only at home.
Yes, yes. So let's quickly, introduce yourself as well as the Pop Shots as a podcast, and then let's
Yeah.
start talking about the news. Yes.
So I'm Tony O'Rourke. I'm VP for partnerships here at Inago, and I look after relationships mostly with publishers and research organisations around the world. Yeah, PubShot. This is episode 56, as KK said. I can't believe it's 56 episodes already.
Right.
It's a regular podcast that KK and I record where we discuss recently published articles and content announcements that impact the world of scholarly publishing. So looking at it mostly from a technology point of view, but also looking at sort of copywriting and licensing issues and how that's impacting the way research content is being accessed.
Yes, and could you please explain to the audience why we have titled this episode A Kind of Magic?
Uh, what a well, I suppose for the uninitiated, of which I count myself sometimes as one, AI is a kind of magic. And this episode draws inspiration from Queen's wonderful album from 1986, A Kind of Magic, celebrating the transformative and almost magical impact of AI on the scholarly publishing workflow. So there we are. That's why it's called A Kind of Magic.
You have totally sold AI for the rest of the world. So now that you've successfully accomplished this task, let's move on to the first story. This is Tony. The first three are research related to peer review, so this might be a little dense for even me, but generally I'm just warning you. So the first research article, it's a preprint on Archive titled Understanding and Supporting Peer Review Using an AI Framed Positive Summary. Now I want to just this is a disclaimer. Even though it's sort of saying peer review, what it means is a review by peers of some written content. So I'll just summarize this. So it is set in the context of the actual academic peer review, but what we are talking about is LLMs offering a solution by reframing criticism positively. And this study, the research, tested how AI summaries and evaluations could impact authors' perceptions as part of feedback of a particular writing task. And the participants were asked to write cover letters and then revise based on the feedback. And results show, Tony, that AI summaries boost perceived autonomy, competence, and fairness, and overall evaluations affect emotional responses and revision quantity. In the sense, if you frame the criticism positively, the original writer of the content takes criticism well. This is very important in the context of peer review,
Yeah,
because you have harsh criticism, maybe language that you do not want the author to see by a reviewer who might be actually struggling for time or maybe having a bad day. And so we don't want that to affect. And such research is critical in terms of improving the overall peer review
yeah,
environment.
absolutely. You think back to when you were learning, you're at school or a college. The best criticism, the best way I found I learned was by open, constructive, positive criticism.
Mm-hmm.
Negative criticism, the barriers go up. You respond in a different way. Open, positive evaluations, open, positive criticisms are an essential way of learning, I think. And the use of AI to provide these critiques, I think, it shows a good, responsible use of AI. In fact, we're doing it ourselves in some of our own products,
Mm-hmm.
where you can create summaries of papers or summaries of sections of papers using tools like our Inago Read or our peer review assistant.
Yes, and also we will be eventually providing reviewers with the option of paraphrasing their summaries to improve the way that improve the tone and everything, so that they can be
Absolutely.
considerative of. Yeah, so this is something that we are very excited to develop, and this research is helping us in terms of moving our sort of vision forwards. And
Yeah.
moving on to the next research paper, this you would agree, Tony, is a concern among publishers that you've been hearing a lot. So the paper is titled Detecting LLM written peer reviews. So before I read out the some of the key points from the paper, so what have you heard from publishers in terms of them being concerned whether peer reviewers are simply using AI for doing the peer reviews and not doing the review themselves?
Well, I speak to publishers all the time about different parts of the workflow, and peer review is one of those stages that I discuss. And some of that's come back. And probably more in the last 6 months and any time I can remember, are concerns that publishers are expressing about the use of generative AI tools to help in the writing of review reports. There are certain words or ways things are expressed, which an experienced reviewer can quickly detect and easily detect. And I think the concern isn't so much just about the use
Mm-hmm.
of these tools, but it's about the lack of disclosure, the lack of openness
Right.
about the fact these tools being used.
Yeah.
And if you've got a perfectly well trained LLM, or one that's trained on your content or your type of content, it can play a positive role.
Right.
But you've got to be open and disclose that.
Right. So let me just quickly read out the points that I have. So in the paper, the authors discuss the challenges for detecting AI-generated reviews in the context of peer review. So we are talking about that. There are a couple of proposed watermarking schemes to identify LLM-generated reviews, which is important from the research integrity point of view, from a peer review point of view as well. And the new techniques that they are proposing ensure statistical rigor and maintaining the integrity of the peer review process in the context of AI generated content. And the details of it, if you go under the hood, it involves injecting specific prompts into the manuscript files, which are designed to instruct the LLMs to incorporate the distinctive watermarks in their generated review. So basically, you have some hidden text in the manuscript that the reviewer might drag into an LLM, which forces the LLM to then create the answer, which can then be detected. Interesting research and very contextual. And the provenance again of every content, but also peer reviewer content, is an important aspect of research integrity, right, Tony?
Absolutely, AI content detection and peer reviews is absolutely critical in research integrity. And organisations like us are developing tools which will help more easily, more readily to identify AI content in any given type of document, whether it's a peer review report or an article, an original article.
Mm. And the second last peer review story in terms of research would be some research into improving the meta review, which is basically the combination of all the individual peer reviews, so that we can have a consensus sort of an answer as to whether a manuscript is suitable for publication. These are the kind of I guess outputs that a journal editor would use in terms of eventually making the final decision. So what does the research say? It is titled Bridging Social Psychology and LLM Reasoning, a conflict aware meta review generation via cognitive alignment. And I'll confess, I'll be very transparent. This research is way over my head, but I brought it up because it is important in the context of generating meta reviews for AI assisted peer review. So,
I mean, let alone the content of the article, which I read. I didn't even understand the title. I had to read the article twice to understand what it is. But you can understand what it's trying to
yeah.
present.
Yeah, so the paper introduces a framework that merges social psychology insights with LLM reasoning, the reasoning type of LLMs, to improve meta review generations. And it focuses on detecting and reconciling conflicts among peer reviews to provide a more balanced summary. And this approach employs cognitive alignment techniques from the social psychology side of things, and to guide LLMs in understanding and integrating diverse review opinions, which is very contextual, Tony, in the context of agentic AI and as well as
Yeah.
agentic AI led peer review. It is very important for conflicts to be resolved. For example, we have something that we are calling the LLM roundtable that we are going to use to ensure accuracy. And when there is conflict, we might need to use something like this to eventually reach a consensus, right?
Well, yeah. I suppose thinking about this, my only concern with this is that you know the nature of peer review is there's going to be conflicting opinion.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be conflicting views. Um, and as a former journal publisher,
Mm-hmm.
or works for a journal publisher, although you don't want to encourage them,
Mm-hmm.
you also don't want to restrict the way reviews are being done.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're not trying to sort of vanillarize, sort of standardize the review. So I think there's still an important role. There's still an important part to be played in terms of having sort of opposing views. You get opposing opinion all the time. It's how the LLM can best reflect that particular position.
Right.
So maybe one of the ways forward, we'll see more training of LLMs in specific ways. So maybe this LLM will present this idea or this methodology or this approach, whereas another LLM might say, well, if we look at this particular approach, it gives us this answer.
Right,
So
right.
there'll be more, granularity or sort of in terms of the type of LLMs that are being used. But no, it's interesting research.
Yep.
Using AI to generate on consolidate meta reviews to manage conflicts. Well, what you want AI to do is to work in a responsible way to make the work as easy as possible for the journal editors, like we're doing with our peer review assistant, to help
Mm-hmm.
to reach a peer review decision, but with human guidance,
Right.
human assistance.
And if somebody is wondering what the results were, the empirical evaluation demonstrated an improved consistency and reduced bias compared to conventional meta review methods. Which basically it has improved the existing meta review methods, which is great. I would recommend people who are working with AI for improving peer review and or rather for creating peer review solutions to read this
Yeah,
article and incorporate its findings and
yeah.
take steps. Now, finally, the last peer review article or peer review related news story is something that we are indirectly related to. So it's a news feature from Nature titled AI is transforming peer review and many scientists are worried. So I don't want to discuss the all the points in the article, but in general, AI peer review has positives and negatives. So this article sort of details both of them and how the different players in the AI, I guess, the publishing technology systems are trying to build products that consider, taking the advantages as well as, figure out solutions to not have the disadvantages play a major role. And it also features our colleague, Mary Miskin, providing her thoughts on peer review and peer review automation. So your thoughts on this and her comments.
No, it's a very balanced article on how AI is being used, will be used increasingly. And as Mary touched upon, we're developing a review assistant which will help publishers
Mm-hmm.
to use AI in a responsible way as part of that review process
Right,
with human assistance.
right. All right, Tony, moving on to the next article. This is I think, a blog. It's titled Better Science and Higher Impact with Overleaf and DSci Publish. Are you familiar with DSci Publish?
I've only recently heard of them.
Yeah, so they're an open source and content, I guess, and preprint sort of a network, and it is a peer-to-peer network as well. So what they are doing is, I mean, this sort of a network allows researchers to attach data, code, and files to their papers, and the submission is thus streamlined. So what the main point that I wanted to talk about is that they are thinking of bringing to action a token based system to reward peer reviews. So if suppose you do some good work, then your peer reviews are, I think, it is prioritized and sent to the right subject matter expert. So it's an interesting way to ensure integrity in the context of peer review. Your thoughts on it? What do you think of incentivizing peer reviews in
Oh,
general in terms of
I
rewarding?
mean, without specifically talking about this paper, there have been um, approaches made over the last 20 years plus to find ways to incentivize, well, 10 to 15 years to find ways to incentivize reviewers. Reviewers do this great work in most cases without any kind of financial reward. They're doing it for the good of the community, for the good of their knowledge, for the good of the science, moving the science forward. But reviewers are increasingly challenged to accept reviews. So by incentivizing them, make them want to work with you as a publisher
Mm-hmm.
more readily, or to provide your services, your time, your invaluable time
Mm.
more readily. But it's the first of a number of methods that have been introduced. This is the first time I've seen an AI based incentivization scheme for things like code, for example,
Mm-hmm.
and adding resources. So I wish them every success.
Right. So, to understand how the token system is supposed to work, every scientist who begins to use the system will receive free tokens, and this can be used to have their own research quickly reviewed and qualified by qualified peers. And additional tokens can be earned by reviewing others' work. Basically, you get some sort of a reward for doing peer reviews, and that you can use for uh, getting your peer reviews done, as in your manuscripts will
Yeah,
be done faster.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I suppose yeah, there's the positives and negatives in that.
Yeah.
If you've got good research, it should be reviewed regardless of whether you've been a reviewer or not.
Right. Now, moving on to, I guess, four related stories. I'll first talk about this article from Scholarly Kitchen, a second digital transformation for scholarly monographs. So it's sort of clear from the article, but monographs are transitioning from digital to print right now. So that is what we are talking about. Now, what are the challenges? Libraries prefer flexible selection models and permanent access rights in the digital realm, mirroring previous print practices. Now, digital models are unlike this, and they demand they are driven by demand-driven acquisition and offer more flexibility than print. So eventually, we have conflicts in terms of ownership and access, right? And this is we require new models as we've been talking about in terms of licensing. And the new business models that are proposed are like including the subscribe to open model, which we'll talk about in the next three stories, which bundle entire catalogs to reduce costs. Tony, so your thoughts on this, and I'll then move on to the next three, and then ask for your thoughts again.
I'm old enough to know that licensing ebook content or scholarly monograph content into libraries has been a challenge for years and years and years.
Mm-hmm.
Because the traditional concept of ownership doesn't necessarily apply when it comes to scholarly monographs. So I think he's right to be able to show that licensing models need to change to reflect the way this kind of content is being licensed, and how it can impact on the long-term access for libraries, and how it can impact on short-term revenues for publishers.
Right, and let's take a quick look at all the three articles. So the first one is DOAJ. The blog has published an article called "The Launch of the Subscribe to Open Label." So we just talked about subscribe to open.
I mean,
DOAJ.
before we start, I mean, is it worth explaining what subscribe to open means?
Okay, well, why don't you do that?
So let me see if I can. I thought about this beforehand. So there are a number of ways, number of different open access licensing models.
Right.
So the traditional way a library buys a journal used to be, you buy a print journal, you put it on your shelf, that's it. You hope somebody comes to read it, and then they move to an electronic licensing. So they'll license a journal electronically with or without the prints, mostly increasingly without the prints, and then anyone within the institution who is entitled to read that content can. Open access then changed that so that if a particular article is open access, then regardless of whether your institution has a license or not to read that particular journal, if the article is open access, you can still read that article. So subscribe to open is kind of it's a combination of both the traditional licensing model, where there is subscription revenue, subscription journals, but moves it to open access. So the publisher converts subscription journal to open access by leveraging existing subscription revenue. So your institution has spent X on this license, and by continuing to spend X, maybe plus a little bit more, plus X% on top, they'll ensure continued access for subscribers, but make the content freely available to all researchers. So effectively, it's a trust license. It's making sure that institutions realize by subscribing to open, you're ensuring the continuity of this journal for all researchers.
Excellent. Thanks for that excellent explanation. So now, why we talking about DOAJ having a label? Is because DOAJ now, if you access the directory of open access journals, you can within its databases you can find this label, which is already applied to approximately 60 journals. And
I'm surprised it's so few. I thought there would be a lot more, but obviously it's still taking off.
Yeah, and the metadata changes have already been updated, or rather updated. Metadata is already updated to reflect these changes, and so these labels have been added. So it's easier for somebody to find out which is a subscribe to open journal, and this is a good thing. And I'll go to the next one. Now, this is again, Portland Press is transitioning to subscribe to open, and then they are also using this to measure open access, as in this initiative. And apparently, open access articles show 1.5 times more citations, which is explainable, and nearly 5 times more downloads than non-open access articles.
Yeah.
And this news story also mentions that usage has significantly increased in regions like the Asia and Oceania between 2020 and 2024. Some of this is related to the pandemic as well. So what I'm trying to say is that many I guess organizations and publishers are moving to this model, and libraries also have to sort of be ready for that. And that brings me as a nice segue to the Nature Index article title: "Could libraries band together to ensure open access for all?" So again, it this is again an article about subscribe to open. We have a bunch of articles. So again, over 70 journals are testing this model for 30 years, and those among those 70, 60 have already been added and given the label in the DOAJ. So the aim, obviously, as Tony has explained, is to offer free access without charging authors. And Bio One is apparently leading the trial, and some publishers like Dig Router and Annual Reviews are adopting it. And eventually, the main thing is that it could help smaller journals become open access. That's the theme that or the main point that I took away from it. So a lot of subscribe to open, which you mentioned, Tony, is a transformative agreement, and transformative agreements have been the norm for the last several months, at least at least in the stories that we have been talking in
No,
PubShorts, right?
what I found amusing was the title, "Could libraries band together to ensure access?" Well, how long have library consortia existed?
Yeah.
They've been existed for decades.
Yeah.
And this, I think, is just an evolution of the model. But I mean, this isn't new. I mean, I think we talked about this in an earlier episode. In physics, for example,
Mm-hmm.
there's a program called Scope, SCOAP, which
Mm-hmm.
was run out of CERN, and the whole model there was kind of a subscribe to open model. So saying, look, you as a publisher will receive income from CERN, which will make that content accessible for all. It's a different kind of model. It's not library based, but libraries are supporting that model, helping to fund that model. So it's an evolution. It's a next step in library in licensing models.
Right. Before I switch to the last story, which is a quick hit, I want to quickly ask you a question. So, Tony,
Yeah,
we have talked about transformative agreements, and things are happening across different geographies. And for many
yeah.
publishers, the things are changing, and they need to have new strategies. And one good example would be the One Nation, One Subscription initiative that in the Indian government has initiated, and it is in place for the last 3 months or so. And in such cases, publishers need to understand how to sort of work with the government and the institutions so that they can get their strategy right.
How they
And
can get involved in those deals. Yeah.
right, and what I was hoping that you could explain is Inago and Charlesworth have their own expertise in India and China to help publishers. So could you explain this, and so that
Yeah,
publishers can
so
come to us?
we provide expert advisory services in those key geographies in India and in China. So we've been in China or Charles should say, been in China for over 25 years now, and are seen as really one of the leading expert voices when it comes to how a publisher should enter a
Mm-hmm.
particular market, and how a publisher should engage with the Chinese market. Anything you need, if you're an academic publisher and you're looking to sell in China, or to promote your content in China, or to work with board members at editors in China, or even just help put together a go-to-market plan, a strategy for China, they can help. And we're doing the same thing in India, obviously with the ONOS license. Publishers are increasingly asking, particularly small to medium-sized publishers without local representation, how can we get involved? So we can provide the same kind of expertise for those publishers who are looking to make more of an impact, or to maybe become part of that One Nation, One Subscription deal in India.
Right, and if a publisher wants to get in touch with us regarding these things, how could they do it?
Uh, well, I suggest in the first instance, if you're interested in the One Nation, One Subscription advisory model, come and talk to me, Tony O'Rourke, at tonyo@anago.com. Equally, I can put you in touch with my colleagues at Charlesworth for the China expert services that they offer to publishers
Ex-
there.
Excellent. And let's move on to the last quick hit for this episode. This is an IOP editorial. Sorry, it is an editorial in STM Publishing News. It is titled IOP Publishing Celebrates Outstanding Peer Reviewers. Peer reviewers do need recognition, and that's why I picked this up. So let me just quickly go to my notes. IOP Publishing, which is IOPP, has announced the recipients of its Outstanding Reviewer Awards 2024. These awards recognize reviewers who provided exceptional peer review reports in 2024, and over 35,000 reviewers submitted reports, and the winners were chosen by IOPP's journal editors, and the selection was based on the number of reviews, timeliness of reviews, and the quality of the peer review reports itself. And the program is the first free peer review training initiative. It's also a very good initiative by IOPP, and over 16,000 peer reviewers have achieved IOP trusted reviewer status, which is a mark of excellence. So excellent initiatives by IOP Publishing, which I think you work with them you've worked with them extensively, and peer reviewers need recognition as well, right?
Yeah, no, this is another example of how uh, a publisher is trying to respect the excellent work that a reviewer does. I mean, IOP, I worked for IOP for a number of years. They were always forward-thinking, slightly ahead of the game in terms of different models that can be used
Mm-hmm.
within publishing. And this is another really good example of how they, showing that they want to reflect the fact that they've got the work that the reviewer does is so critical in the journal publishing or the scholarly publishing process that they have to be recognised in every way possible, because they're not being rewarded financially. So can they be recognised? And this is a really good initiative.
And thus, we come to the end of the episode where we discuss so many AI related peer review.
It's a kind of magic.
It's a kind of magic. I was about to say that. So thank you for that segue, Tony. So, once again, Tony, I'll ask you to let our listeners and the audience know where they can find all the 55 previous episodes and how can they get in touch with us.
Yeah. So as I said, KK and I spend time every week for your benefit to understand what's going on in the scholarly publishing world and how technology and licensing and copyright changes can impact you. If you want to look at the previous 55 episodes, they're all available on our YouTube channel. Just search PubShorts on YouTube and you'll find all 55 episodes there. And we'd encourage you to press the like button or the thumbs up and share with your colleagues. And if you've got any ideas or suggestions for future topics, please send them through to KK or me, either via our LinkedIn accounts or directly to me at tonyo@anago.com. And thank you to those of you who've already up till now sent us recommendations and suggestions for topics.
And again, once again, thank you for everybody who's watching and listening. And until the next time that Tony and I will come and talk about news stories, this is Dr. KK signing off on behalf of Tony, on behalf of the team. We will see you in the next episode. Bye, Tony.
See you next time.